Test.
I'm on.
As am I.
Have a little clip for the president.
Yeah. Maybe? No?
That'll work for me.
Or just working. Susan broke the microphone.
There you go. Now you've got two.
Oh, there we go.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? Good.
We figured out how to use microphones.
Yeah, that's a good start. Now we can learn how to be voice artists. Welcome to our second ceremony, Hannah. I don't know how many of you were here yesterday, but there's certainly going to be enough of you as new faces to ask some hopefully inspiring questions. My name is John Stockton. I was fortunate enough to be one of the two voice directors of Sailor Moon. Let's just consider the other guy a non-factor at this point. Okay. As I say, I was fortunate enough to be selected as a voice director. Great experience, and it's wonderful to be able to come to cons like this to share the experience that we had, and hopefully give you a little bit of additional insight into what Sailor Moon is and was all about. Thanks very much. Good to be here. Oh, come on!
Good morning, I'm Ballantyne, and I was the voice of Sailor Moon. I'm extremely excited to be here today. We have a nice little show in here. I like this. I like all the outfits. Serenity are fantastic. I don't even know what else to say right now.
Yeah, I kind of said
I know
everything, so.
he always does this to me.
Well, it was good to be here. Thank you.
And hi, y'all. I've been practicing. I'm Susan Roman, and I play Sailor Jupiter. It's so great to be here in this wonderful city. We're having a terrific time. Last night I had the best sliders I've ever had in my life.
She went on and on about them.
Yes, I did go on. It was kind of boring, but they were so delicious. So I can't wait to have some more Texas beef. No offense to any vegetarians in the audience. I actually was a vegetarian for 5 years when I was in my 20s. And it was great being a vegetarian, and it was great then starting to eat meat. It's all a matter of what's going on in your life at the time. But I'm very glad to be here in Texas, in Dallas, about to have a good old Dallas steak. And also to hear any questions that you guys might have about Sailor Moon. And before I give it over to my fellow actors and voice director, I have to remind you all that Sailor Moon was probably, I think there might have been one little guy in there before that, but it was the introduction of anime to North America. So I guess we owe it a little bit of a debt, because I know, thanks, because I know when we first started doing it, we didn't know what on earth we were looking at. And we were enthralled, excited, because of course we saw it first in Japanese, so we didn't really understand what was going on, and we didn't understand what was going on when we did it in English, but no, I'm just kidding. Of course we understood everything. But it was such an exciting project because it was so different, and we never knew it would be as successful as it was, but we certainly knew that it was special. And yeah, so I think we owe Sailor Moon, although some people might say, oh, that's old hat. It was one of the first of its kind, and if not the first of its kind. So that's that, and on to the show.
Last night, Sailor Moon was quite nice to hear the comment, the compliment that it was referred to as perhaps still the most important anime that's ever been done. It's probably yet to be topped in terms of its longevity and its popularity and its ongoing following. It's now 21 years, I guess, and getting, in fact, stronger. So again, as Susan said, we had no idea what it would be when we were doing it. We didn't even know what dubbing was. In terms of dubbing, well, we did it in Toronto. As you know, the only real dubbing that anybody ever did there was because we have one province that is primarily French, as most of you know, Quebec. And we would occasionally do dubbing projects that were French to English, English to French. I mean, if you were fluent in both languages, not that I am, but that was it. When we saw the Japanese anime come in, which was a totally new style of animation to us, we were really impressed with certainly the artwork and the manner in which it was done. And I think that led in large part to how inspiring the whole procedure turned out.
You know, another thing that was pointed out to us at one of the anime conferences that we were at in Canada was a man stood up and he said Sailor Moon was so important on so many levels because not only did it bring anime to North America, but it also joined two countries, two parts of the world that had been at war 40 years earlier. And 40 years in the big blip of time is no time. So here are these worlds that were fighting, that hated each other. And this really helped them sort of get together and say, hey, actually we do have a little bit in common. We do have some loves together. And it really helped join the nations together, so that's kind of nice.
Rebuilt the bridge, as it
Yeah.
were. Yeah, that was a wonderful one. He was a very eloquent speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful
He's
speaker.
the guy that calls all the NASCAR races. He's really cool.
So I'll tell you what we normally like to do, because if we set a schedule or a program, we will often wind up talking about things that you have absolutely no interest in or that are really foreign to you. We like to throw the floor open to you folks. You're the ones with the questions. You're the ones that are wondering about how did you do this, why did you do that, when did you do this. So if that's all right with you guys, we'll call it an open forum. We'll throw the floor open to you. We'll talk and talk and talk until you're totally sick of us. And hopefully we'll ultimately come up with the answers to all of your questions. So, with that being
Any
the case,
questions?
Sure, let's go. Yes.
And I'm not, I don't know if you guys are aware, but Sailor Moon is actually going to start back on Japan where they left off this.
We are, yes.
So if you have a chance to pick up your roles again, looking back on all the seasons that you actually did or before, if you have a chance to do the roles in the newer series, what would you change about your character, or what would you actually have looked at it and decide some years later on? Would you change anything? Would you try to do the same? How would you actually approach the newer animation roles and as a character?
We'll take that, all three of us should
Yeah,
give our own.
sure.
Thank you, good question.
I know what I would do. One of the things that happens when you do it Sailor Moon was it's dubbing. So they're throwing the words in front of you, you're reading to the bouncing ball just about. And they didn't give us scripts. We had no idea what was happening from episode to episode. Not only that, we didn't know what was happening within the episode. So you would see, they'd say, okay, fast forward to Linda's next line, okay, go, and I'd be like, ah! Okay, let's move on to the next one. Oh, Queenie, what are you doing? You know, and so that was the script in my mind. That was the show in my mind. So what I would love to do is I would love to see the show first. I would watch it because now we can on YouTube. We didn't have the internet when we were doing it. We didn't have any references. We had nothing. We were just like, okay, go ahead, speak. So I think I would be a little bit more keyed into the storyline for sure, so that we could really, really follow it closely. I mean, you could pick up certainly what was going on to a degree, but you really didn't know all the little ins and outs, and that's what I would do.
I would actually do the same thing with one caveat, and that is, I think one of the reasons that the series was so fresh and sparkly was because we were all flying by the seat of our pants. You know, sometimes actors can be over-rehearsed. It doesn't happen that often, but when it happens, you get performances that have, because they've been, done, take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, take 5, it loses that spontaneity, it loses adrenaline. And when you're doing dubbing, which is what Linda was talking about, the way that we dub Sailor Moon, you are so alert, alive, present, because you don't know what's going on. Every one of your senses is on fire. And sometimes when you're in that heightened state, really great stuff happens. And it takes a good director to know, now wait a second, maybe that line, maybe the word until wasn't quite clear. So a good director is going to say, I can live with that because that line was fabulous. Whereas a not so good director is going to say, yeah, but we have to do it again because it didn't sound like you said until. It sounded like you said until. What? What's the difference? What? And you know in your heart it was a great line, it was a great read. But all I'm saying is, I'm not casting any aspersions on directors, good or bad, but I mean, John, of course, was very good about that. He would always take performance over something that's so minorly technical, right? And so that, in that regard, of course, I would like to know what's happening from episode to episode, which we did not know. On the other hand, I really liked the speed with which it was done, because it forced us to find creativity in our socks. You know, you're kind of going, what do I say now? You guys have all done karaoke in some form, that you're familiar with it. And you know what happens when you know the verse, but you don't know the chorus very well. It kind of comes along and you go, oh, I never really knew this part really well, and you start kind of getting a little panicky, and you're singing and you know it's not quite there, but something inside you says, oh, just do it anyway, just do it, it'll be fine, it'll be great. And it is, if you don't worry about it too much. So it's what we were doing is kind of along the same idea, that it was always, the verses were okay, but then the chorus would come along and we would just have to just do it, you know, like Nike, just do it. Anyway.
Thank you. I'm that good director that Susan pointed out. And sort of in response to your question and your comment, I think from my standpoint, a good director is one that knows that he has to please the audience first and himself second. So that's why those kind of reads have to be accepted, even though they're not 100%. I'm not going to go into all the detail of what a voice director does. I'm sure most of you are familiar, at least peripherally, with a lot of it. What I would change is some of the panic due to, in fact, the fact that budgets for doing Sailor Moon were so skimpy. They were really, really low. Time was of the essence. We worked with a producer who was very conscious of budget, very conscious of time. It all came down to, of course, how much money they had to spend. Going overtime was a problem, because when you go overtime, it means paying me more, paying performers more, paying the studio more, and readjusting. Perhaps trying to get people in the next day whose schedules were not compatible with what they required. So I would like the pace of the production to slow down. I'm not necessarily differing with Susan when I say the pace of the recording, but the production had been just a little bit better paced. I think it would have perhaps made it just that tiny, tiny bit better. Doing it again, I think I would insist on a little more time. My job, I was rushed, the voice director, as opposed to the performers, because I'm a performer as well, so I know from both sides. I have the advantage of seeing a script ahead of time. I have to see a script ahead of time. I can't fly by the seat of my pants. I've got to know contextually how that entire script runs. And I work on a color coding system so that I know who is saying what line. I can pick it out of the script as we're on the fly. My preparation time was diminished. I was rushed, so that sometimes if a line might have been delivered in an improper context, I wasn't always able to be on top of it. It's my job, but sometimes we had to just say, well, we just don't have time. As well, the time constraints were such that if we had 15 minutes left at the end of the session, at that point, we would go back and pick up lines from another episode or fill in with a couple of lines from something coming up and someone wasn't going to be available. I didn't even have scripts to work with. I had no idea what the lines were. The producer was the only one that sort of understood the entire package, so that I would be thrown, along with the performers, into an unknown situation. And cross my fingers, hope for the best. All I knew is the voice matched the lips. That's all, and I had to just be happy with that.
Any more questions?
Sailor Moon?
I have a question for Linda. Since you were the third voice actor, basically, how was it for you coming in and doing that role that would already feel like you were people that,
Done it well.
not necessarily that, but already established a personality for the character
Right.
and voice out of the character?
So she asked how it was coming in as number 3. Answer, terrifying. Terrifying. No idea when I went into audition, just, no, going into audition for another part. Oh, it's Sailor Moon, oh, that's cool. Oh yeah, I've heard of Sailor Moon, neat, okay. Oh yeah, it's pretty popular, I think. And it's probably with little kids right now. Yeah, okay. Go in there, get it. Oh, I have to do it. Oh, I'm actually replacing Sailor. Oh God, what have I done? Oh my God, what have I done? Terrifying, terrifying. And it was also in the day, like I said before, that there was no internet. There wasn't YouTube that I could pull up and go, okay, how exactly did she do this? What exactly did she do? I didn't have anything. I didn't have any of the episodes. I couldn't see, I'd seen them on TV a little bit, but I wasn't following it as a little kid thing, right? So I was like, So I was terrified, and I was doing the best that I possibly could do. I'd hear one line, that would be my reference, And I wish I could remember that line, because they always played me this one line. And it was, something about cookies or something like that. It was like, okay, I got it, okay. I'm like, here we go, now we're gonna do the voice. Okay, I'm ready to go. And then I'd be like, oh, and I was having such a hard time trying to nail what it was. And the entire time my husband kept saying, make it your own. Make it your own. This is your character now. And I'm like, it's not my character. It's not my character. It's Terry's character. They want Terry. And he's like, no, you got to make it your own because you're not Terry. You're not Terry, Linda. Make it your own. And finally, one day I listened to my husband. Do not tell him I said that. I can't start things now. And I just started having fun with it. And I went, what do I want out of this character? What is this character to me? And to me, the character was always, she was a teenager. And the teenage years are the most amazing years, and they're also the most hell years in the world. That's all there is to it. And I know this right now because I'm living that hell. I have 3 teenage daughters. Yeah, 3 of them. Oh my God, and they're all little moons and everything. Oh my God. So the teenage years they are children. They still have children's minds, and they want so desperately to be growing up. And they're trying so hard, but they're still so goofy. And I love that about them. They'll walk out of there looking so great and everything, and then they'll go over on one of their ankles and go, oh, look at me. Maybe I shouldn't wear these shoes after all. I'm like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't. They're my shoes. So anyways, that's what I kind of wanted to get out of it. And it was definitely not an easy thing at all. Next.
Yes.
I was just curious about the season 6 of Sailor Stars. It's always been my favorite season, but a lot of fans and their songs is one character and all that stuff. I was curious if you ever had the exposure to it or inside of it. I know it has some controversial issues with gender swapping, so I didn't know if that was like a very
Well, the whole idea of the gender swapping, lesbianism, all of those issues, please understand that a number of years ago it wasn't nearly as acceptable as it is today. That's one thing. It's one of the reasons it sat on the shelf for so long. Also, best of my knowledge, and I think we all get asked questions about the coming season and what's going to happen. We're as much in the dark and hear as many stories as you do. My understanding is there's an ownership issue, and as popular as Sailor Moon is, that's not a minor thing anymore. So that is, I believe, the holdup, if that's in answer in part to your question, that is in part the holdup. You folks, in fact, are probably down here, or maybe the recipients of that season being done, as well as perhaps revoicing everything else. else that's come to this point. I hope you're all booing that. But I mean, the time is right for that now. I would think that it would be certainly going to be more acceptable. Whether or not it would still appeal, whether federal regulations would allow something with that content to be shown to 6, 7, 8-year-olds, I don't know.
I think they can handle it more than anybody.
Well, maybe they can. Maybe they can. I mean, you know, our education systems, both, you know, you folks in the U.S. and us in Canada are progressing to the point where that kind of information is no longer something that you keep under wraps and that isn't ever brought out as part of our lives. Finally waking up to the fact that it exists, and unless you live in third world countries, we're not really prosecuted for it, or, you know, hung in public squares for it, which is the case so often.
Anybody got further information?
I
Did I say it really well? Was I eloquent and everything?
What John's trying to say is we're ready for it now.
Yeah, we
We're
are.
ready for it now. We weren't ready for it back then. It was, people were sort of like, oh, they're kissing cousins, their faces come together, but they're not together. And I know when I was recording, I was going, what? There's hearts, there's romantic music. What? Let them kiss? What's going on? No, they're not ready for it. Okay.
Well, the thing is, too, the really important thing is that I believe in Japan, this was a primetime adult fare. And in North America, it absolutely was not. I mean, especially then, we have a different tradition, and that is that animation, at that point in time, animation was meant for children and young adults, preteens, whatever. And so it was never going to be going on in an evening venue or at a time when adults would be watching television. So it had a whole different focus. And as John was saying yesterday, I didn't realize this, some of it had to be cut because some of the stuff that came in, well, let's just call it some of the footage, some of the shows that came in, had to be edited because the stuff was absolutely not suitable for the restrictions imposed upon children, television for children, right? So that's a huge thing. And there are guidelines that the networks prescribe, and you have to follow them if you're selling your show to that network. But now, of course, there are way more cable networks, and I think that their regulations are much, much looser. I know that their regulations are much, much looser. I mean, all you have to do is watch a cable network. For example, on I don't know what it's like in America, but on Canadian television for the longest time, and probably still is, you're not allowed to show somebody drinking alcohol on television. So any beer commercial, you could toast, you could say hi, you could open the bottle, but you could never show someone actually drinking the beverage because somehow that was not good.
It magically got into your system.
Yeah. So you'd see everybody at a party and they'd all be drinking nothing. But they all had, bottles of beer in their hands or whatever. And it was the same thing, in the programming itself. I used to have a television show, and there was a big issue whenever we would pour, it took place in the 1920s, so whenever we would pour champagne, which seemed to happen every 5 minutes, there would be a big question about, pardon me, whether or not we were allowed to actually put it to our lips and drink it. So finally we got permission to actually drink it. So you see what I'm talking about is that the rules and regulations of the networks will dictate what you are allowed to include in your programming. And if you want to have less restrictions, then you're going to have to look at alternate networks. And so cable TV now, they do nothing but drink champagne you just anywhere you look, you'll see they're drinking beer or providing alcohol or whatever. And that's okay because those restrictions are in place.
Yeah, it's very well put. It exists to this day too, and a lot of the anime that comes over from Japan has to be still edited. I voice directed the original Beyblade series, and they would come up with shows that would come over first of all as a half-hour complete show. Then there had to be edits to accommodate commercials. So it had in fact to be a 22-minute episode. And then within that, they had to send sometimes either edit or send for reanimation scenes where one of the kids had a knife in his belt that wasn't sheathed because you couldn't show the point of a knife because all of the Beybladers were young teens. You couldn't show someone riding a bicycle without a helmet because they didn't want to encourage young children to be unsafe. And so all of these things came into play, and especially with Sailor Moon, where they would show 13-year-old girls bathing. Well, you can't do that. You probably still couldn't do that on TV.
13-year-old?
Yeah.
Baby. Oh, and also remember back to, I know you guys are all too young for this, but back in the days of Dick Van Dyke and first sort of episodic television shows, they weren't allowed to sleep. They were married, but you weren't allowed to show them sleeping in the same bed together. So everybody who was married on television had 2 single beds. And so I always thought, gee, my parents are really weird because they have like 1 bed, and everybody on TV has 2. Oh, maybe we're not rich. You know?
And they had kids too. How could they do that? Next question.
What was it like to be Sailor Moon and have your mom? Because you weren't just a teenager, you were also kind of a mom.
I know, it was freaky. I was telling my friend that one day, I said, you don't understand. Like, okay, so they're kind of like sisters, but they're not sisters, she's actually a mom. But she's a mom in the future, so they'll come back. And, did you get it? And she's like, that's really weird, that's really freaky. Yeah, it was kind of funny. And Stephanie Beard, who was reading with me, would come into the studio and go, "Hi, Mom." She'd do that in public and everything. I'm like, I'm not her mother. We're sort of sisters, but in the future, never mind. Yeah, it was pretty. That was one of the things I really liked, though. Wrapping your mind around stuff like that. And going, oh man, and Tuxedo Mask. Like, why are you fighting for him so badly? Like, why do you want him? You know you got him, man. You got him. But never know.
Next. Some guy. Okay.
I have 2 questions, actually, both for you.
Uh-oh.
First question, you played a couple of characters in the series that were short-lived, but I love the characters. But I'm wrapping my mind around the completely different sounds of the characters. How do you alter your voice for each of the different characters?
Well, thank you. It is. Part of the job of a voice actor, before you can even even think of being a voice actor, certainly in animation, commercial world is completely different. You simply have to be given, if you'll indulge me, the God-given or whatever given talents to be able to do that. It's as simple as that. Some people can change their voice and sound believable, and some people can't change their voice and sound believable. Some people can't change their voice at all. That is the first thing you've got to have to be able to go into the industry and be successful in any way, shape, or form. What specifically, what characters were you talking about?
Bugsy, I think.
Right, Dog City. Oh my God, nobody's mentioned that name in a long, long time. A fun series to do that unfortunately, do you know what happened? That was called Dinosaurs, that series. Great series, owned by Coca-Cola. They came, it was deep from California, came up to Toronto to do that. My God, I haven't thought about this in 15 years, 20 years. Came up and they did 65. Those were the days when they would book a performer for 65 episodes. Now it's 13, maybe 26. Came up booked us for 65 episodes, and we would do them all in the space of a year, sometimes a year and a half. And then we finished that series, and upper management at Coca-Cola changed. So before we finished the series, but before it went to air, upper management, of course, it's the same with any management, out with the old and with the new. Oh, that was done by old management. Nah, we're not going to run that. And it was shelved after paying out all that money. It's come back in terms of being a retro show and a fun one. But that's an interesting sidebar to that series. But in terms of doing those voices, it's a matter of training yourself, getting a good teacher who can bring out your natural talents to be able to do something, to be able to talk like that, like Bugsy. Oh, I to be able to talk like that. And change your voice. I can't tell you anything more than it's an innate ability that most of us have.
And it's taking risks too.
It is.
You have to take risks. You just have to go in there and play and just go, I don't care if I look like the biggest idiot in the world.
Right.
They used to make fun of me all the time, especially when I was doing Sailor Moon, because my eyes were always crossed. And I'd always like, ah! And they'd be like, can you do it without crossing your eyes? No. Don't ask me to. And I always said if they cut off my hands, I couldn't do voice acting at all, because I'm always like this. Sorry, can we do this again? I'm always flaring my hands around.
Do you have a comment further to in
yeah,
terms of voice changing?
Voice changing thing, that actually is a really good question. Because a lot of people, what I just said, a lot of people are capable of doing different voices. I think everybody has a secret little voice that they do in the shower, you know, or they say, you know, I can do a really great mountain lion, and you know, they only do it by themselves. They never do it in public, but they can do it because for some reason you heard yourself saying something, and a part of your brain said, "Oh my God, that sounded really good. That sounded really, really a lot like a mountain lion. Boy, I'm really talented." So that's where it starts. Where for 1 second you realize I can imitate something. And then you set yourself the task of, well, like here, we're having a field day, because we're hearing accents we never hear at home. So it's wonderful. My ears are on fire, because I'm going to go back to my room, and I'm going to practice them, and I'm going to see if I can make that sound. And part of making a sound that is not your sound, part of doing a dialect, or an accent, or a voice, has to do with muscle memory. So if I'm placing my voice in a certain part of my head or my throat, my muscles constrict in a certain way to give me that sound. So I basically have to instruct my brain to make my throat constrict, or to place something in my nose, or to place my tongue in a certain position. It's very intellectual. And as soon as I put all those components together, the voice comes out the way I want it. So to give you an example, way back when, Moon Unit Zappa. Does anyone know who Moon Unit Zappa is? We're going back in time.
Frank Zappa's.
Frank Zappa's even farther back in time.
Yeah, but they might know him more.
So Moon Unit came out with a song called Valley Girl. And it was the first time that anyone in North America had heard that particular way of speaking, which of course now is the way that everyone speaks anyway. It's funny, it really worked. So Valley Girl, she did the whole song talking like a valley girl. And we all know what that means, kind of, but I'll show you in a second. So I was asked, I was doing some radio commercials for a jeans company. And they said, you know what we want to do? We want you to sound just like Moon Unit Zappa. Can you do that valley girl thing? And I said, what is it? No, I don't. Yes, of course I can. And the actor says that, of course. Can you ride a horse? Yes, of course I can. You know, we always lie about these things. So,
And next thing you know, you're Sailor Moon.
the next thing you know, you're on a horse. So they give me a tape of it. I go home and I listen to it, and I can't understand a word she's saying. I have to write it out phonetically. This is the God's truth. I actually have the original piece of paper. So I wrote it out as if she was speaking a foreign language, because that's what it sounded like to me. And I couldn't, and I tried to do it, and I thought, I can't do it. Why can't I get it? And then I got the key. When in one of the lines that she says, she talks about the fact that she wears braces. And she hates wearing braces. And she can't wait till the braces are off, because then she can really, meet some really nice guys. And I said, wait a second. How is she going to talk if she doesn't want anyone to know that she's wearing braces? And and all of you can try this when you go home and you'll be able to get the accent perfectly. She keeps her upper lip snuggled tight over her top front teeth, so no one can ever see her braces. So what happens is her mouth cavity actually closes up. So now I can show you. So one of the lines, now I'm not doing a dialect here. All I'm doing is making sure that no one sees my braces. It's amazing. It's just an intellectual decision. So I go into this salon place, because I want to get my toenails done. And the lady goes like, oh my god, your toenails are so grody. I was like, really embarrassed. She's like, oh my god, my God, these toenails. I'm like, sure. She's like, oh gosh, I mean, it's weird. I mean, it's just incredible. And and she talks about the fact that I really did like doing the dishes because it's got people's food all over them. It's just so gross. So when we first heard this way of speaking, it was like, whoa. And anyway, this is just my way of things. And as I say now, there's a derivative. Most people in North America kind of talk like that, so that you sort of go up at the end of the sentence. So you say something like, hi, I think we have to take out your gallbladder, but it's going to be great. You can really trust me. I went to medical school for 15 years, and so just have no worries. So I just I hope that not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just hope that, that there is an education to go along with that way of speaking. Anyway.
And also, as Susan pointed out one time as well, when you're doing a character too, you have one line that is your line that goes, and that sets all your muscle memory into place. So you just go, now I know. Now I know exactly where this character should be. I did this one called Cyber Chase, and I was this crazy witch, and she'd always go, well, hacker. And so that's how I would start that one. Even though my line is what are you doing over there? I go, well, hacker, what are you doing over there? And that would just get everything right where it's supposed to be.
That's a perfect
Called a signature, you could call that your kind of signature line.
Your key phrase.
And when we did some autographs last week at Fan Expo in Toronto, and Toby Proctor was with us, and he was Tuxedo Mask. And everybody would go over to him and go, talk like Tuxedo Mask, and he did the exact same line every single time. He's like, hey, meatballhead. When he said, hey, meatballhead, so you brought your friends along. He's like, why are you hanging out with your loser friends? I can't remember how he put it, but I was like, what? Every time you do that, everybody go, ah!
Because that was the line, as soon as he said, as an actor, as soon as he said that line, boom,
In character.
he was right there. Yeah. It's like a magic little key. It's amazing.
All right.
There's so many girls.
Have you ever seen the live action version of Sailor
We're living it here, baby. Living it right here.
It is so foul. I'm sorry. Have you guys seen it?
I just saw sort of.
Oh my lord, it's pretty sad, isn't it? What's your opinion of it?
Trick question.
Yeah, that's the way I feel. Thank you.
And you over there, you had a question?
Actually, I know you people are interacting with the directors.
Sorry.
Some people talk about, I've seen all the original Sailor Moon live action movies, all of it. And I get that TV is exactly $100 million in the future. However, they say she's from the 30th century. I don't understand.
From the 30th century. That's what they say, from the 30th century.
This is she's supposed to be exactly $100 in the future. So I don't understand how that works.
It's about the fact that they say she's from the 30th century.
30th?
Oh,
Good, answer.
Yeah, no, we'll go out for a drink.
It's because Sailor Moon uses the power of the Adventure crystal to pretty much stop everybody's aging.
Of course.
So she's immortal.
Oh my God, I love how you guys know everything.
Yeah. So now she's immortal and immoral. Yes.
I don't know if you can actually make the baby
Well, the first one was Tracy. Tracy, and what happened with Tracy?
Tracy had a disagreement with the producer. Tracy was a pretty strong-handed lady, and she had a disagreement, in my understanding, of course, a lot of it's hearsay, but this is what I understood.
Yeah, sorry, just have to stand corrected here. She had another engagement.
Oh, pardon me?
Yeah,
I thought
yeah. She was booked elsewhere, and she thought that she would be able to do both, and it was just too onerous to do both whatever her other booking was. I think it was in the theater, but I'm not sure.
Well, I stand corrected. I
Yeah.
thought there was some kind of...
No, and then the scheduling problem, which is...
Oh, pardon me.
And then Terry-
That's way better.
Terry got knocked up with twins. Yes. Love those little babies. Love those little babies. We're not babies anymore.
You know that there were every character that you see, other than the 4 new scouts, who were short-lived anyway, were all they were performed by a single actress each. But there was only one performer who did every single episode as her character from beginning to end. The one who just corrected me.
So she thinks she knows it.
Yeah. Next con, it's
She
just
does.
2 of us, I guess.
I hear they're not going to cast her though in the next one. Just kidding, just kidding. I don't know what they're doing. We're starting rumors. Let's start rumors today.
Yeah.
This is rumor day today.
I was wondering if you had any favorite or hilarious moments when you actually recorded it, remember, or fun times together, processes after the pause background.
I remembered having to do screams that went on forever. And you would scream and scream and scream and scream, and you'd be sitting there watching this stupid rhythmo band that just doesn't stop, and it keeps going, and you would go and go and go and go, and then at the end I go, and I just pass out on the ground, just very dramatically as a joke. And Nicole, who was in the room, would go, oh my God, Linda! And she's like looking up against the glass, and I'd be like on the ground, like, I'm fine. Pick myself up, and then she'd say, okay, we need to do it again. Those are always the fun times for me, I don't know.
Boy, I'd like to be able to say that we all, got together and held arms and had a great old time, but we rarely worked together. So we'd only see each other kind of as we're going, one person's going into the studio and the other person's coming out of the studio. And we'd say, hi, how's it going? Yeah, it's great, it's good to see you, and so there weren't very many chances to have moments of great joy and hilarity. Also because there was a scheduling problem. And you know how it is sometimes. You know when you get the giggles. It's not good to get the giggles when you're doing a production that is very, very reliant on being on time. And you say, you start to giggle and you say, oh, no, sorry, that won't happen again, I promise. Okay, this time it'll be great. So you start to read and you say, oh, he really reminds me, and then you start giggling again. And it actually can get to the point where it's scary, because you can't do it, because for some reason you just can't stop laughing. So we kind of tried to guard against that happening, because there was just no time. Everything had to be on time, and you don't ever want someone to come in and say, oh, we're 2 hours behind schedule because Susan couldn't stop laughing. It's just not a good thing.
It feels good though.
Oh, it feels great.
I love when I get the giggles.
Yeah, and you're crying.
I know.
Yeah.
A lot
And
of
it's contagious, that's the worst thing.
Yeah.
And for me, that kind of thing always happened when you look at their faces and what their eyes were doing. When they go to the little tiny dots or something like that, and those and there's tears are coming out. They don't even have eyes; it's just tears.
Oh, no, that was great. Yeah, stuff like that was great.
Next question. Yes. See, you're starting. You're laughing. There you go.
Like, you know, how there is it acquired
We didn't know at all. We had no idea. We had no idea.
If anybody had told us, we would have laughed at you for sure.
Oh, no, because you do so many cartoon projects, animation projects, and you think, oh, this is so terrific, I think this is going to be great, and then it's not promoted properly or whatever happens, and you say, oh, is it going to go another season? No. And you think, geez, I wonder why, I thought that was so good. Like what John was saying about dinosaurs. So when we were doing Sailor Moon, we thought it was terrific. This is really fun. I wonder, and then we go, who's the audience going to be? Is it going to be, are they going to be young kids, like 5 and 6, or 7 and 8, or is it going to be teenage audience, people watching because it deals with teenagers? We had no idea. But after about a year or 2, or 3, we realized that it was successful, and we were just, hey, over the moon. Yeah, we were just so excited. And it's actually getting time to wrap it up, and we have an autograph session.
We have 5 minutes, you said? I see 5, I hand 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes, so we can do probably one more question,
Yeah.
unless we speed talk. Yes?
The attack names? Oh, give me a couple of them. New Spiral Heart Attack. I love those. And you know what? I love watching them. They'd be spinning around, so you'd always be doing that as you're doing Moon Spiral Heart Attack. You're doing all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I thought they were pretty funny. I never understood them, of course. I was like, what? Heart attack. That's attack, right? Okay. It's not attach. It's attack.
Yeah, remember the rhythm bands back in that day were handwritten too. When we were reading handwritten dialogue that came across, underneath it was a separate element from the picture. We would see the picture, they were lined up. We're talking really old school here, folks, but that's where it came from. They were lined up, and once the bars were lined up in sync, then everything would roll at the same time. So that the handwriting, if a word had been elongated, they would say it was the word again. I can't do this again. Well, there'd be a bunch of A's again to keep you. But if it was I can't do this again, they might write A-G-N. Because you had that amount of time to say that word. And you would simply have to intuitively know that they're saying again.
So, and sometimes it would be like a ginormous long sentence that was written in an area this big.
Yeah.
Really? I gotta get that in time. That's why some of it just sounds so crazy fast.
They had to get a sense of what was going on, but sometimes the length of the Japanese and English weren't compatible.
And when you said that it's handwritten, it's literally handwritten onto film, like movie film. It's just a clear film, and somebody has sat there painstakingly writing out every single watching thing, making sure that it all fits. I have no idea how they did it. They must have gone blind.
They've had their handwriting.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. You could still
They're all
read them.
doctors. I think we're out of time, folks. So, sorry, I think we have another, when's the next panel for us? Sailor Moon panel. Is it tonight or tomorrow?
The girls do.
Girls do.
John gets time off.
Yeah, I get time out too. 7 o'clock tonight. There's another panel tonight if you're around and you still have additional questions, or if you want to hear the same answers to the same questions, come back. Thank you all very, very much. We're doing autographs outside, if any of you are interested, and I hope to see a few of you out there at least. Thank you. I don't know.
The autograph